The risen Messiah of immersion returns to your membrane, and today I'm going to be doing a review of AD&D Second Edition Monster Mythology, one of the blue books. Now, Monster Mythology originally retailed for $15, and it was certainly a great buy for that price at that time. The one bad aspect with this type of book, and I've had a lot of them, and I will tell you this has happened a lot. The binding on these books was worse than any of the Dungeons and Dragons book lines. In fact, I can't think of any role playing game books I've had that have had as bad a time as these. You know, these or the maroon colored ones that had like complete fighter, complete humanoids, complete elves, complete gnomes and halflings. You gotta slam both those in a book together, guys. No one outside of Tim wants that. And speaking of this, a thank you to Sam Wise, to Tim. He sent me this book a good long time ago, and I had planned to review it for some time. I've been looking through it a good bit recently, and this is a book I always like. I had a copy of this back in the day, and this is one. This is just absolutely outstanding. Now, it's not as good as the AD&D Second Edition Legends of Lore. AD&D Second Edition Legends of Lore, that smokes all the books they put out on Gods, period, in the entire Dungeons and Dragons line. It was so vastly better than AD&D First Edition Legends and Lore or Monster Mythology. The book just that was probably one of got to be one of top 5 books that was influential on me in RPGs ever. Their Legends of Lore book, amazing. This book also very, very, very good. I would probably have to put this up very close. Maybe it's definitely a top 5 Dungeons and Dragons monster book, and I'm talking all editions, not monster book, but a religion book. Now, I like this book a lot, but it does have some of the standard Dungeons and Dragons downfalls of monster book of religion books. First of all, they incredibly waste space in this book. I mean, you can see even the book itself is not particularly big. There's a lot of artwork in here, and it's only 128 pages all told. And there are a lot of just complete waste pages, like how to run a divine being. Well, that would be important if most of what you're running in this section wasn't just fighting it. It wasn't about the combat and, oh, it has this power and this power and this power and this. Come on, dude. I don't want to hear about all this. I don't like the way that AD&D does avatars. And within Ring of Fire, they're done very differently, and I would say much better. But the idea, I mean, a completely different idea. The idea just wastes so much space in here. And I could think of many, many, many more gods that you could have created for this book. I could, if I was on the design team, I could have filled this with, I could have come up with as many as they came up with by myself very easily, which is say, with all the writers they have, they could easily have come up with more gods. That's what I want. I want more gods. I don't need the stats for their avatar. I don't need to know that Brando Barris has a 16 strength for his avatar. I don't care about that at all. That's ridiculous. That's not needed. I always hated that Dungeons & Dragons did that. I don't want to fight somebody's avatar. An avatar swallows a D6 investigators around, as far as I'm concerned. You don't go over on them. You're a hero, man. You're not someone that lays a smackdown on people's avatars. That gets ridiculous. And a lot of these avatars really they're very unimpressive statistically. For me, I mean, avatars should be beyond the scope of player characters. They're up here, man. A god is way beyond. A god isn't rolling around with like a 16 wisdom. It's a freaking god. It's a god. Why would it have a 16 wisdom? I mean, that's not what I get with. And I know people say, oh, well, look at real world avatar as a religion like Jesus Christ or like a Krishna or something like that. But that's not really how I try to get down with what I think they're really trying to portray in a fantasy game of Dungeons and Dragons. But enough about that. Just to suffice to say, I mean, you can look at those like stat blocks. They're on every page, So if we took all those together, we're losing a lot of page count here, which could be filled up with more monsters. And the information they give overall, some of these deities you couldn't roleplay. There's too small a bit of information on them. It'd have a tiny little role-playing note there, and then look at all that. I mean, look at all that. Grankel's avatar. It goes from there all the way to down to there, special ability. I mean, that's close to half his whole entry. And then obviously you want something on the priests. I thought it was, I'm gonna talk about the priest part in a minute, but look at that. Like here, the only material you'd have to role play is from there up. That's all the real information you have on the God, on the doctrine, on the religion, on the faith. That's it. That tiny little bit. Um, so that's just not enough. For me, I would rather go ahead and knock that other part out and just expand. Give me more information. That's what you need, because you need that information to properly portray a religion. That's quintessential. How can you do it without it? I can't um, advise that you just sit there and make your own stuff up, because you want to have similarity. If someone in Japan, in Los Angeles, in Virginia, in Milwaukee, if we're all playing followers of the same divinity, they should be reasonably different, not wildly different in what our tenets are, unless we're intentionally playing a heretic. But if we're a member of the orthodoxy, we should be seen as normal to that. We shouldn't have to create that much information. In fact, if you're going to create the entire thing. It doesn't. A lot of these entries, not all of them, some of them are great, but some of them don't give you enough material to work with. So you have to make changes. You have to make large additions. It's kind of like a name, and then some of them even a name and some bad ideas. Again, I could go through them and tell you the ones I just wasn't impressed with at all, but that would be a very, very long video if we go through talk about each and every deity. But in this book, this is the book for AD&D Second Edition, where you get Clungain, where you get Moradin, where you get Corin Larethian, where you get Sohani Moonbow. Yeah, we talked about that trick before. Now, you also get Lolth. Yes, I was right. Miss Lolth Jackson. You get a nails dirt. You get Garl Glitternome. I mean, you might want to just cut that page and send it back to Wizards of the Coast. Maybe they give you a refund god or something. That's about the digester lower right there. But hands down, my favorite deity in this book is Maglubiyet, the god of goblins and hobgoblins. I'm really a big fan of Maglubiyet, and have used Maglubiyet followers in my campaigns, particularly with the hobgoblins, to some very interesting things. I had an Asimar come essentially almost a convert to the religion of Maglubiyet in a game I ran, because he got down with the hobgoblins and their lawful tenets and ways. So, I think there's a lot you could do with that. Some of the other goblin gods were a little bereft of description. You could tell they kind of phoned it in. There's certain details that really aren't hard to come up with, and if you just smash a couple of those together, it's eh. The book does have some pretty evocative artwork, so you can see there that's Groomsh, which I think that's kind of an odd drawing for Groomsh. I always picture Groomsh as like having like just one eye gimmicked out and just the other eye normally, not being like a Cyclops. But that was the artist's interpretation of Groomsh, the god of orcs. You also, let me just show you this. This is my favorite picture. This is probably I can't think of a Dungeons and Dragons picture that I actually like better than this one. I love this picture. I love that. That is so incredibly evocative to me. I'm not sure what these things are supposed to be. There was some kind of goatmen in 3rd edition, the Ibax or something like that kind of look like these, but they're all primitive and stuff. These guys are clearly baller. They're keeping it opulent, as is their custom to wander around. I'm guessing Bahamut. If someone knows because this just kind of seems randomly thrown in here. If someone knows what these things are, leave that in the description below, or don't leave it. I have to do that. But leave it in the comments below. And if I'm wrong, if that's not Bahamut, if that's a different deity, let me know. But I mean, this whole deal here is pretty wicked looking, pretty evil. And I dig it, man. I really dig this picture. This is probably overall in Dungeons & Dragons, period. I can't think of any. It's just say fantasy games. Let's not even say Dungeons & Dragons, but I love this picture. I loved it. It's so evocative. Like, to me, I could just sit there and think about what kind of horrible infernal plans that these entities are concocting for you. And I assure you, man, if you was to go against these guys, if I wove a story, it would be the JOB for the party. I guarantee that. These guys are not to be messed with. They are not to be messed with. I could clearly see that right off the bat. They're like evoking their very god there. It has a very sword and sorcery, very Conan, dark feel to it. Like this is the bad place that you're gonna pay the price in. They also have like gods for sprites. There's a god for the unicorns. Let me try to find the entry because I thought this was funny when I read it. It says each Tigran, I don't know, I'm probably butchering that one, but let's say each Tigran is the Lord of Unicorns and secondarily Pegasus. Pegasus, to the ground with you. You're secondary. You're an afterthought. You're aftertaste. He doesn't care about you. He's a Pegacorn there. He's got the unicorn horn and the wigs. But he doesn't care too much about Pegasus. Like, I guess I'll let you in, Pegasus. But no one needs to be too concerned about you or the likes of you. You're not really all that important there, Peg Eye. So that really struck me funny the way that was written. Like, oh, unicorns are important, but I guess I'll brook some Pegasus, but barely. Now, let's see here. So you have gods for sprites. You have evil gods. You got the god of vampires, which I've used at some point. Cancellus. Oh, I think that's actually. I don't think they made up that. I think that's a real world deal. Yeah, I mean, you got so many in here. There's a picture of a lich. He's just chilling, like he's just doing his thing. Like liches aren't like out there always concocting. Like most of them just want to study. They're just like undead nerds. They're just like, wow, I'm just gonna study here for the rest of eternity. That's why I harness the powers of undead and deathliness. They're not necessarily out there to get you or to bother you. Like you could probably like walk by a lot of liches and they'd be like, what? You know, they're like the absent professor. People like always play them like they're just this brooding monster that is just out there just thinking constantly about getting you. That's not what a lich is. He's trying to learn spells, son. He's trying to learn more spells. He wants to learn more. He's one undead, so he can read more. He want to read all the books he could get a hold of, and then get a hold of more books. I mean, that's the major problem you're gonna have if you don't let that man be educated. And then, I mean, really, who's the bad guy there? You're trying to keep liches from getting an education. Oh, but they're the bad guy because they want to learn. They want to get that master's degree. They want to pursue occult studies. Oh, sure, a lich should be banned or be discriminated against already as it is. Not being allowed in the universe. People are like, oh, look at that, it's a lich attacking. He's like, I was just trying to check a library book out, son. Oh, now I guess I got to disintegrate somebody, and I'm the bad guy in it. It's just like a guy that stick you in your face. And the lich will stick you in the face, particularly drunk ones, so watch out for those. Now, I think that's really just so important when you're trying to get with the mindset of a lich. They're not really the kind of sinister entities that individuals often make them out to be. And when you run a lich that's just like in the library, you know, that could just blow a player's mind. I'll use a lich like that in an area where there's a large library and for whatever reason the lich is going to be tolerated there. And he's just in there, and you going like, oh, it's a lich. Like you fit to turn him or battle him. And he's not even confronted by you. He don't even know you're there. Or then you had to go like ask him. It's like, oh, well, we'll go ask Barnabas. He knows everything. Who's Barnabas? There's the lich over there. He's read all the books in the library 3 times. Excuse me, Barnabas. What do you want? Well, where's this book? Oh, God. He like, puts his book down all irritated, and he just goes and gets it for you. You know, because I mean, you can do that. It's unexpected, and it's not out of character because he wants to learn. That's what his motivation is. He wants to learn. That's, you know, your number one thing behind liches is learning. But that's a lot about liches, isn't it? Here's I think this is from that horrendous thing called Temple of Elemental Evil, but it is a pretty good picture, pretty neat looking. So this book is, I mean, it's just packed to the gills with gods. You got gods for lithids, you got gods for beholders, you got gods for unicorns, and secondarily Pegasus. You have gods for dwarves and elves and maybe halflings, but I mean, who's gonna read those? That's not the same wise. You know, and you have Maglubiyet, and I caution you strongly to learn the doctrines and ways and words of Maglubiyet, for they may come back to haunt you via the power of the Hobgoblin Empire that's going to come and reign your world.